Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, Eventide patron-only stream. Hi there, I am Jason Bullman. I am the Director of Game Design at Paizo and the creator of the Eventide setting. I also had that game called Pathfinder. Welcome! Welcome. Today, we are still in our ramp-up. We are in the process of getting closer and closer to the launch of the playtest campaigns. In fact, the first session is like 2.5 weeks from now. It is not far away, and there's so many things left for me to do, but a lot of it is coming together, and you're starting to see more and more pieces of it every day. So today, what I'd like to do is chat with folks about player options. That's something that I've been focusing a lot on. I've been doing the session zeros. The first session zero was last week. The second session zero, because I have 2 playtest groups, the second session zero is tomorrow. And these players are chomping at the bit to build characters. I've already started to see some. There's some really exciting stuff going on there, but I want to let them kind of gel a bit before I start talking about them. I'm hoping to have kind of the groups mostly pulled together by next Tuesday and maybe do a stream talking about the characters themselves. But we'll see. We'll see whether or not I've got them yet. Time is ticking. So what we're going to do here today, I think, is talk about player options, because that's been a big focus of the work that I've been doing over the past several weeks, is polishing off and finishing up these player options. Now, there's a lot here because, you know, there's a lot of different features in Pathfinder 2nd Edition and things that I wanted to build to kind of bring Eventide fully to life. So that is kind of what we're going to go over here today, is what I've put out already, what hasn't been put out and is going to be put out in the next week or so, and what you can expect in the future. So first off, I want to talk about kind of why player options are important. Why build them? Why am I spending so much time and effort on them? Shouldn't I be getting to the adventure? And the answer to that is yes. Frankly, I'm running out of time for everything, but the adventure is actually coming along. It's just not ready for me to show anyone yet. It's still kind of in outline and diagramming, and maybe the next Secrets of Eventide, which is not this Saturday, but the Saturday after that, maybe I'll take a look at the process at that point in time. So instead, right, I've been building all these player options, and why are they so important, right? I think one of the things that's most important about them is that the player options add real gravity to the narrative choices of the game, right? Of the story you're trying to tell. Because the moment it's something the players get to interact with, it's way more permanent than anything you can do narratively as a game master, right? Because once the player interacts with the thing, if they take a feat, if they take a class option, if they take, if they pick up a piece of equipment, that is going to be with them for the rest of the entire campaign. It's always present. So you have to design these things with care. You have to design them in such a way that speaks to the world, because it really does signal to the players what's important in the setting, right? What parts of the setting are truly critical to, the player's experience, and the things you build rules for are going to be pretty high up on that list. So, it not only signals to them, but it actually lets them be kind of a part of it, right? Normally, right, the story of the world is something the GM kind of presents. It's played out through monsters and stories and narratives. But player options let them pick up those things and keep them and make them part of the story. It ties them directly to the lore you're trying to create. So you're signaling to your players, hey, this is important, and you're telling them, hey, why don't you pick up part of this and be a part of this story, right? And there's a lot of obvious ways to do that. There's some more subtle ways to do it. I'm going to kind of talk about some of those here in the coming, 45 minutes or so. So let's actually look at some of the options from Eventide. Now, I think, one of the first things I put out was some of the ancestry material, right? So ancestries are a way that you can speak very directly to the lore of your world, because ancestries are the people of the world, right? And more so than classes, right? Because most people in the world are not fighters, but a lot of the people are humans and dwarves and elves and gloamlings, right? They are those things. So ancestry is kind of your broadest brush, right? Anything you put in the ancestry's options, you're saying, yep, these are things you're going to see all over the world of Eventide. So they really speak to the lore, right? And if you look at the ancestry options that are on MinotaurGames.com right now, first of all, you have a brand new Ancestry, the Gloamling. So automatically, you know, I'm saying, hey, these are a big part of the world. They are here. They are just as common as a lot of the other ancestries in the world. And, you know, you can play one. But then beyond that, right, you know, you've got, you know, dwarven feats that speak to their longing to return to the earth. You have Seneschar elves, a special kind of elf that speaks to the changing of the seasons, which is the changing and turning of the cycle is a part of Eventide. You know, Eventide, the word itself means that moment between day and night, that perfect turn of dusk, of sunset. And you know, the elves reflect that. You know, you look at, you know, you got humans who are echo-touched, you know, who have some lineage back to possibly Volsampra and whatever strangeness is going on over there. So, all of the ancestry choices in there speak to the world, like goblins, and you know, they have swamp foot, right? That lets them, you know, traverse swampy and muddy ground easily and effectively. So, you know, all of your ancestry feats, all of those options, the heritages and the feats are all speaking to the lore. But beyond that, moving on through the character creation process, you're going to hit backgrounds. And backgrounds, for me, in a narrative sense, are more tightly focused. They're less about tying players to the world story than they are about tying the players to the location where the adventure is going to be taking place. So you'll notice that a lot of the backgrounds that you can find right now over on the backgrounds page on Minotaur Games, they're all focused on the Icescar Valley for the most part, focused on the Icescar Valley or Wormbone itself. So they are all mostly regional in nature. If you are beyond that, you can kind of take the generic ones, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do decide to take those feats, they tie much more closely into the story of the world, and may even down the road come with little side quests and other missions tied specifically to them. I did this in Fall of Plaguestone, actually. Spoilers, there are side quests tied to the backgrounds that are in the adventure, and at least some of them. And if you are of those backgrounds, you can possibly have those side quests trigger and occur to you. So the backgrounds are there to tie the characters kind of locally to a place, or really root their story in a location. Whereas Ancestry is really there to tie people to the fabric of the world. And then finally you get to class. And this is obviously where the biggest chunk of material is. There is so much in class to dig through and play with, right? Because class is by far the most defining feature in the game. So, and I want to bring up the Minotaur Games site here real quick, just to kind of give you a couple quick reminders here. So, looking at the site here, this is the Eventide page, and I want to remind everybody, just in case you haven't noticed it, down here on the Eventide page, there is an updates section, and the updates section lists all of the things I have done recently. So if you're curious about what's changed in the past couple days, all you have to do is go to the Eventide page on MinotaurGames.com, scroll down to updates, and you will find the most recent changes. Now, a lot of these are going to be on the classes page, because, frankly, that is where the vast majority of my work recently has been. So let's go over to the classes page, and here in class, you will notice that a lot of the classes are in there now. I'm still missing Sorcerer and Wizard. The rules on those are still coming together, so they're not quite ready to show off yet. And I do also want to stress that, you know, honestly, not all of these are complete yet. They're not fully rounded out. They have options, they have choices, they have things that kind of came to me as some of the stuff was coming together and I jotted down notes. But I wouldn't say that any of these are complete. In fact, many of them are probably still missing a handful of feats or other possibilities and options. Some of that will come from my players and what they want out of the campaign. Others may come from thoughts and ideas from you, the patrons. Others will just develop over time. And what I'm aiming towards is getting a complete player's guide that I can create a PDF for and, put up for sale for people even outside the Patreon. Now, obviously, folks here will get either get it for free or at a 50% discount. So folks here are going to get it for cheap. But that work is actually coming together. Right now, it's looking like the player's guide is going to be about 64 pages long. So that's pretty exciting. I'm actually just about to finally commission the art. I'm signing off on the art orders tomorrow. So we're getting some art. Not a lot yet. Obviously, art's really expensive, so it's going to take me a little bit to get all the art I need. All right. So let's go back and take a look at classes here. I got kind of off on a tangent. So classes, obviously the Penumbrist is coming soon. That's something that I'm still working on. I got it about half designed. And most of the main tentpoles are down. I just need to finish and round out some feats and do some proof of concept testing. But there is a lot more on this page to explore. So let's start by taking a look at Alchemist. So, and the reason why I kind of want to go through these each individually is classes are such a defining part of the player's experience, right? More so than anything else, your class defines your play experience. If the class doesn't have the options you need or doesn't perform in the way you want it to, you're not going to have a good time. So for me, tying the classes and adding class features that tie specifically into the world is really important because it allows that most important, character choice to tie directly into the setting. So let's take a look at the Alchemist here. So the first thing you'll notice is the Alchemists in Eventide just have a new class feature called Scavenge Reagents. That after combat, as long as they have spent 2 or more alchemical items made with infused reagents, after the fight, they can spend 10 minutes scavenging the battlefield for remnants and leftover reagents to get 1 batch of infused reagents back. So what this does is it allows them to actually kind of keep up their supply a little bit longer throughout the day. In Eventide, you have to be a bit more careful and cautious with your reagents because they have to go farther. People rely on alchemy a lot more as spellcasting has become less commonplace. So that is why that exists. And then if you look deeper into the Alchemist, the feats play off some of that. So one of the things that's in here is the ability to craft poultices. Poultices are alchemical items that work slower. They're cheaper and easier to use, but they don't happen all at once. They happen over time. So there's something most common folk would use because they're cheap. And if you need to heal a cut or a bruise, apply a poultice to it. It'll be better in a few hours. Whereas, your elixir of life is going to do that right away. So they kind of work almost exactly the same way. They just restore hit points at a drip, slowly restoring you to hit points. All the rules for those will be in the final player's guide. But right now, they mostly work pretty much like the similar alchemical items, just slowly. So they've also got harvest reagents. This is a feat choice you can take that you can turn other alchemical items into reagents that you can then use for quick alchemy. This isn't quite as good as the scavenge reagent ability, but it does allow you to kind of make up some of the gap. And then they have routine alchemy that lets them make alchemical items faster. So you'll also notice then here at the bottom they've got Shadow Bomb. This is just me adding some elements of the game world Shadow, and Shadow magic is a bigger part of Eventide because that's one of the few magics that has not yet been affected by the decline in magic. So as a result, it's kind of started popping up all over the place, including in alchemy. So there's that. Let's talk about the Barbarian. So next up is the Barbarian. The Barbarian really only has one major feature in here right now, and that is the Cold Instinct. And this ties directly into the kind of frozen north of Alnir, right? So Alnir as a continent sits, it straddles all the way to the equator, all the way up to the polar cap, although there is a continent up there that kind of reaches down and bridges Alnir. The frost peaks, actually, or sorry, the blue peaks. Getting my name. Bridge Alnir in the north, and barbarians from the far north have many of them have this cold instinct, and what it is they bottle up their rage inside. They hide it under just kind of a calm surface until it finally explodes out of them. So they're the cold. They give you that look of death. But they have a bunch of cold-based abilities. They have a number of feats and whatnot that play into that. And this is really just, frozen rage and frozen glare and cold heart and raging blizzard. They're just infused with that frozen north. So really, this is just purely a tie to the setting, and specifically to the Iskar Valley and beyond. So that was the main feature I wanted to build for Barbarians at the time. Next up, we get to Bards, and Bards get a new muse. That is the big thing that is in here right now, and all of these feats are tied to that muse. So all of these are Shadow Muse feats. And basically, Shadow Muse is the darkness is whispering to you and telling you about magic, and your muse comes from some well of darkness, and it talks to you and it inspires you. So there's a whole bunch of feats in here that are tied directly to that. Things that like give you a subtle performance and give you a whole bunch of kind of new composition spells, some focus spells, a composition cantrip. Shadow Sight is a composition cantrip that allows you and your allies to be able to see in the darkness. All of these are tied to some pretty cool abilities. So like Walk in Darkness gives you low light vision, and whenever you cast composition spells, you gain a +1 status bonus on stealth checks made to hide for 1 round. So you can, the magic suffuses you and you can hide. So again, this is shadow magic tying into class features and class options. You'll start to know that there is a new trait floating around in here on some of these called Shade. Talk maybe a little bit more about that later. You're going to see that pop up quite a bit. All right. So that is Bard. One of my players is definitely playing a Bard. I've already seen the character sheet, and oh boy, I'm in for a wild time. So that should be a lot of fun. So next up, we got Champion, and if you haven't checked this out, the Champion is one of my favorite bits for this. The Champion gets a new tenet, Law, as opposed to Good or Evil, which are the only options available to you now. With the Law tenet, you have to obey laws and strictures, and you can be a paladin who follows the Law tenet instead of the Good tenet, because that would still be allowed. But that does mean that there is a new champion type that needed to be created, and that is when we get the Judge. The Judge is the lawful neutral champion, and the Judge gets an entertaining reaction called Order's Judgment. Whenever an enemy damages an ally and both are within 15 feet of you, you can use this reaction to accuse the enemy of committing a crime against the order of things. The foe must choose how to plead. Guilty! The ally is unharmed by the triggering damage. Or innocent! The ally gains resistance to all damage against the triggering damage equal to 2 plus your level. The enemy becomes slowed 1 until the start of its next turn. If the enemy has not been attacked or targeted by a spell or effect yet in combat, it is instead slowed 2 until the end of its next turn. If the creature chooses this plea, it is temporarily immune to this reaction for 1 hour. So this is you get to basically slow the bad guy. you weigh him down with his judgment. He pleads innocence, but you don't believe him. So you are the law. Yeah, that's I said that at least once while I was writing it. Folks in chat are suggesting that you can play a certain dreadful judge. Yeah, should be fun. So that's all that the champion gets in here right now. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at the cleric. So the cleric, the big thing that we're going to get in here, obviously, are the deities. Now, as I've mentioned before, there's only 5 deities left in the world of Eventide. There used to be more, but there's only 5 right now. That's all that's left. And those 5 have inherited all of the portfolios of all of the other deities that came before. So there were other deities in the long past, at least that's what the stories say, but they are all gone. So all of the deities have multiple favored weapons. They all have giant lists of domains. But frankly, as a cleric, you still only get 1 favored weapon, and you still, have to take feats to get domains. So it is still balanced. So there is more flexibility in your domains, but or in your deities, but you have fewer deities. So, and there are 5 deities, 1 for each of the major alignment aspects. So there's a good deity, a lawful deity, a neutral deity, a chaotic deity, and deity. There used to be more. They used to be more specific, but that was long ago. So to tie into that, there are 2 new feats here, and I really do like these 2 feats. One is Final Calling. This basically makes you monotheistic. You believe that your deity is the only deity. The others are all fake, or they're bound to fade away just like all the others. And for you, the shrinking of the deities is more like a bracketed tournament, and you are thinking that your deity is going to. So your fervent devotion gives you some bonuses to that, but you do take some penalties when trying to make religion checks about anything other than your own deity, because you just don't care about those other deities. And then there's Forgotten Faith. This one's really interesting. This Forgotten Faith basically means that you worship some old aspect of a deity that got folded in, right? So you may still worship Astramari or Silara or Silvex, right? But in reality, you worship some aspect of them that they absorbed long ago when that deity faded away. All those followers kind of migrated over. So you get to pick your own favored weapon. You can change the divine skill to any other skill that uses the same ability score. You can remove 2 domains from the list of domains and add 1. And basically, you create your own weird, forgotten custom deity. Now, in my games, I'm probably going to codify those as actual forgotten deities, but in your games, they could be whatever you want. So, so yeah, that allows you to kind of explore kind of what the old deities may have looked. Yeah, so there's that. Next up, we have options for druids. There aren't any. Druids aren't allowed. Now let's move on. Next up is fighter. Fighter has some fun stuff in it. I tried to make some new fighter feats that really played to some of the styles of characters in this world, some of which are still used today. So there's Petal and Thorn, which is a spear and shield fighting stance that basically, whenever you're wielding a shield in one hand and a one-handed spear in the other, you can easily make the attacks with the shield and the spear with the shield up and maintain your protection. And the big bonus here is your shield doesn't go down unless you shield block or take an attack of opportunity with the spear. Otherwise, your shield stays up for as long as you remain in the stance. So, I mean, until the end of the fight, right? So, but it does allow you to kind of save that action. Now, that normally for most people, that's their third action. They don't really care about it anyway. But if you are trying to be mobile and move around and do stuff, this does allow you to take real advantage of. So, that is pretty cool. That feat was originally developed by the elves, but it has since been adopted by the Zankar Imperium military. So they have a lot of people who fight Petal and Thorn. Next up is Anvil Smash. Anvil Smash is a dwarven fighting technique. I figured if I was developing an elven fighting technique, I should develop a dwarven fighting technique. And this is about fighting with a hammer and an axe, allowing you to kind of use some of the sweep and push bonuses between the two weapons interchangeably. So that's kind of fun. And then lastly, I realized that Eventide has a lot of kind of smaller people in it. You know, we've got halflings, we've got gloamlings, you know, so, and goblins. So smaller fighting techniques. So for that, there's Slide Strike, which allows you to kind of slide around and underneath bad guys and fight them from close quarters and kind of keep within their reach. So that's kind of fun. So that gets to the end of the stuff that got loaded up up until today. Today I loaded up some brand new stuff, so you may not have seen this already. But next up is some monk stuff. There's a note here about Ki. All monks who tap into Ki do so through the occult tradition. There are rumors that there are still monks who tap in through divine, but that requires a special kind of link, and as a result, divine Ki spells are uncommon. So most people use occult. And then we've got, you know, a handful of interesting monk feats. There's a new monk stance here called Weasel Stance, which is, again, another ability that allows you to fight up close against larger foes and kind of nip and bite at them within their reach. And then there's two other abilities in here, and these specifically come from Zankar. Zankar has Penumbrists, who are the only spellcasters that are, you know, sanctioned by the state. And then they also, as another part of their kind of gray guard, they have monks. And some of these monks have the ability to sense divergence, so they can use detect magic to sense other traditions of magic. So they can start learning the traditions of magic that is nearby. And then they have strain magic, which they can use when they key strike to make someone take worse penalties based on the level of magic around them. So that is a thing in this world, is that magic has a level. And in most places, it's pretty standard. Occult works fine. Divine and Arcane is kind of strained, and Primal is basically dead. And if you have a link, it allows you to kind of treat the magic level as if it's one higher, which means Arcane and Divine spellcasters with a link can cast as normal. But monks have an ability to punch you and disconnect you from the weave and make it a little harder for you to cast spells. They could conceivably make it so that you couldn't cast at all, but that would be a pretty rare circumstance. So there's that. That's what monks get to do. That's pretty cool. That is definitely a Zankar ability. Yeah, that's one that's taught in Zankar. They're big fans of that. All right, next up, we've got some ranger feats. Just a couple here. Rangers lose access to the warden spells, right? So they don't get those because those are primal spells. So they do not have access to the warden spells. So to make up for that, I've started giving them some alchemist abilities. So they can use healing herbs, depends on what side of the pond you're on, to create poultices. So they can basically use alchemy to create poultices, and they get to do so rather economically. One feat allows them to make a handful every day. There's another feat at 6th level that allows them to make quite a few per day. And then I've got some abilities that, frankly, are just kind of interesting. Things that I wanted to kind of express and explore in the Ranger. One, and this one literally got written within the past week, is Always Aware. The Ranger is a super light sleeper. They don't take penalties on perception checks. They always get a check to notice someone sneaking within 30 feet while they're asleep. And if they notice someone sneaking up on them, they can make a deception check to appear asleep, and then the foe is flat-footed when they wake up. So, yeah, they can kind of jump up at you. That's kind of fun. I also give them a new animal companion ability called Call to Heal, which allows them and their animal companion to move together for one action. They have to end the move next to each other. Otherwise, the animal companion doesn't. So, you know, some interesting ways to play around with some of those features and kind of make some of those things happen. Lastly, we've got some rogue feats, and I don't think I'm done with rogue feats. I mean, as I said, I don't think I'm done with any of these feats. But the rogue ones are the ones that I've been working on recently, and as I said, I still have sorcerer and wizard stuff. And I'll actually talk about what direction those are heading here in just a moment. But for now, let's talk about rogue. So rogue, again, magic is something that rogues are not going to have as easy access to. Rogues currently have a couple feats that give them minor magical abilities. So in this, they're getting simple alchemist abilities. This is a bit more robust than the ranger ones. This allows them to kind of make more alchemist items, but they can only do so via quick alchemy, so they have to do it during a fight. They can't do it in advance like the ranger can with the poultice. So they get slightly more powerful, but they have to use actions in a fight to use it. Simple alchemy just gives them the basics, and then complex alchemy allows them to make a lot more. It also gives them an ability that if they make a poison using complex alchemy, they can apply it to a weapon as part of creating it. So they basically cook it on the blade, which is fun. Gives them a kind of cool thing. Now, the other thing that's in here is really interesting. There's probably going to be one or two more feats tied into this, but this is the first one. And that is Shadow Gift. You have been blessed by the shadows and feel at home in their dark embrace. You gain low light vision. When you are in areas of dim light, you are concealed from creatures with low light vision. You cannot use this to hide from them as your location is still obvious. Creatures with dark vision can still see you. So basically, rogues can take an ability that allows them to still remain concealed against creatures with low light vision. So they kind of blend into the shadows. You can still tell they're there, but they become kind of hazy and indistinct. So that's fun. There's definitely some interesting stuff there. And again, look at that. It's got that little shade marker there, huh? And that's so. Those are all the class features and feats that are out there right now. I still want to put up some sorcerer and some wizard stuff. The sorcerer is going to get. Obviously, there is a Shadow Bloodline in the Advanced Player's Guide. That is far more common in the world. There's some other there's actually a few changes to that are going to be noted in this document, and I hope to have those up in the next couple days. So Shadow Sorcerers in Eventide are a little different than the Shadow Bloodline from the Advanced Player's Guide. In addition, the Elemental Bloodline does exist in Eventide. There was a period of time where I didn't. But with me kind of fully aligning the planar cosmology, Elemental Bloodline does exist, but it is arcane. It is not primal. So you can still play an Elemental Sorcerer. You cast off the arcane list, not the primal list. So that is a change to how that works. So there'll be that. There'll probably be a handful of other feats and interesting things for folks to play with in Sorcerer as well. Now the Wizard is going to get 2 more theses that they are going to get to play with. One is a link specialist thesis that allows them to focus on links and the nature of links. Links are the tiny little quasi-magical MacGuffins that allow spellcasters to cast as if the magic level was higher than it actually was. So it's basically a conduit to reach out to that magical source and cast your spells more easily. When otherwise the magic is kind of more inhibited. So there is a wizard thesis that focuses on that allows them to kind of get the most out of that and help others around them as well. And then the other one is kind of a thesis that makes you kind of is what many folks in Eventide consider kind of a conspiracy theory, and that is a 7 Truths wizard. That is a wizard who is obsessed with the 7 Truths and seeks to kind of get to the bottom of Eventide and what's going on there. So that is a wizard thesis that you can choose from. Still trying to figure out exactly what it does. I think I've got a good idea. So we're gonna do that over the next week, and you'll be seeing that. So on top of this, obviously, some of these class options came with some spells. So some of those spells have already been baked in. I put up a spells page just to get some of these spells out. There is a brand new kind of just cantrip, an occult cantrip called Creeping Shadows. This basically allows you to treat you cast your shadow into a nearby space, and you can treat yourself as if you're in that space when casting spells or doing things. Your shadow can, in essence, do things from that space. So, let's say you were locked behind bars, you could have your shadow fall outside the bars, grab the keys off the table, and unlock the door. It would take a while. It's a little slower, and it's very obvious what's happening, but that's a thing you could do with that particular cantrip. Then there's Detect Weave. This just tells you about the level of magic in the area and how well it's doing. Beyond that, you get into the focus spells for the Shadow Bard, and the Scales of Balance Champion focus spell is also in, and that's for the Judge. So, lots of stuff, right? Grand total, between this and lore, the player's guide right now is hovering, with some material that hasn't been released yet, is hovering at like 40,000 words of so there's a lot there. Plenty of stuff for folks to play with. There's plenty more to come. One thing that I haven't talked about yet that I may talk about next week, depending on how this goes, is next week I may do a deep dive into Destiny, because Destiny is a special thing in Eventide, and you pick your destiny as part of your character creation, and that's a thing. So I may do a deep dive into Destiny next week. So Destiny is just kind of a way to give players agency about their characters and what direction they want to take them, and kind of where they see their character going. And maybe you are fulfilling your destiny, maybe you're fighting against your destiny. Who knows? It's all part of the story. But your destiny gives you special ways you can use your hero points, including giving you bonuses on certain hero point reroll uses, and giving you a brand new special ability that you can use based on your destiny that you can use when you spend a hero point. So there's a lot of really fun stuff in there. And I think, boy, I'm trying to remember how many destinies I even put in here. I can actually look it up here. Just half a second. And when it comes to destinies, there is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. There are currently 15 destinies for you to choose from, built into the world document. I may try and round that out to an even 16 before but I'll have to take a look. They're one of the few things that got written about a year ago, and I need to go through and give another pass and scrub to. So those will be up in the next few days. I just need to carve out the time to go through them. So, yeah, that's what we got. That's what all the player options are. Now, that's a lot. In the player's guide, the all of the ancestry, background, class options, equipment, all that stuff is like 2/3 the book. The first third is lore and world history, and then the last 2/3 is all rules, options, and things to make the players kind of fit and be kind of cool, cohesive parts of the world of Evil. So with that, I think we got a little bit of time left. So as per usual, I'd like to open it up to some questions. If folks have any questions here, I'd be happy to answer some questions about player options. Yeah, we can talk about some of that stuff. One thing I do want to mention, while folks are getting caught up to me, because I'm about 10 seconds ahead of you in terms of stream time. I do want to talk about Shade and how this Shade trait has showed up all over the place. Shade is like the Shadow trait, but it's related, but it doesn't actually come with any tags or tracers right now. Right now, it just exists, mostly on spells and feats and some other options. So it kind of floats around in a number of spots, and it doesn't have any defined purpose other than to say that this feature represents a tie to shadows and darkness. That's it. That's all it means right now. It may mean more in the future, but right now, that's all it means. If you're planning on running this, that's really all you need to know. You should probably keep track of players that have Shade player options chosen. For no particular. All right. Let's see here. We've got I got one question from a few minutes ago. I'll let that filter in. So, one of the questions was, will fetchlings be an Eventide, or is that the role that the Gloamlings play? I need to give a good, long, hard look at fetchlings and see how they fit into the story of the world. There's some things I have to consider about those sorts of ramifications. So let me look into it. I'll get back to folks on that. I think by and large, one of the things that is currently not part of the offering is building more features and class feats for things outside of the core rulebook. It's something I want to do, but frankly, it's a big time investment. Because I have to brainstorm the stuff, then I have to write it, then I have to revise it, I have to edit it. It takes a lot of work. So I believe right now it's one of the goals for the Patreon. So I believe it might be like the $2,000 goal or maybe the $1,500 goal. Of once I reach that plateau of monthly support, I'll work on developing that material. I'll set aside more of my personal time to make it happen. So yes, no apparent reason. Just don't worry about it. Just keep track of Shade. No reason. Always the GM. Yeah, that's me. So yeah, that's currently where that sits. Right now, most of the money that is being raised through the Patreon, right? And we are a week away from the very first charge. All that money is just going into art right now. I've spent $2,000 on art already. So, and that's for 4 pieces. So art's expensive is what I'm saying. And getting good art that matches my vision for the campaign is going to cost quite a bit. The player's guide alone could easily end up with a budget of $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. You know, depending on how heavily I want to art it. How heavily I want to art it. But you know, it's worth it if that means I end up with an end product that's pretty and, you know, draws people into the world in the game. And then I got to start working on the game mastery guide, right? I have a lot of text for that. I have no art, no plans, and some of that text got cannibalized for the player section. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the player's guide. That's the next thing I roll into once the adventure is underway and the player's guide is wrapped up. Then I start rolling into the GM's guide and the GM's information for this part of the world. I have all that I need to run stuff, but I don't necessarily have enough for other people to stuff in there without, you know, putting some you know, that said, there is still an entire class that I haven't released, right? You know, the Penumbrist is coming. And frankly, I'm going to want feedback on it, right? Because it's a draft. And it is a full spellcasting class, which means the class itself is kind of easier than most classes, right? Classes that don't have spellcasting are, by their very nature, a bit more complicated than spellcasting class. Because, you know, spellcasting is so much of their identity. So the Penumbrist is actually a relatively straightforward class. You know, you get to pick your shadow and you know how your shadow is, right? What type of shadow speaks to you, and it helps influence your magic and gives you kind of a different bent to your character. But other than that, it's mostly an occult spellcaster, so with a lot of shadow, which I still need. Shadow dancers. Are shadow dancers more common? Yes. Most assuredly. Yeah, they're certainly more common in the of even. So, yeah. What we got? That's where we're at. I think right now, you know, looking forward to the next few weeks. I have a session 0 tomorrow. That'll round out the other group and get them working on character generation. They're actually the group that plays first. So I did that kind of backwards, but I just had to work with people's schedules. So, you know, they're going to have to work double time to get their characters ready. They're going to have about 2 weeks before the start of the campaign, which is terrifying because the first session of the campaign, I believe, is 16 days from now. So I have a lot of work to do. It's going to be a long week. I think I've taken Friday off just to work on Eventide, so I'm going to be busy. Busy. Will we see unique world flavor in regards to weapons and gear? Yes, you will. In fact, I believe I've got 1 or 2 Gloamling weapons that are coming together. And of course, there are poultices and other things like that. There's other alchemical items that you're going to get to see some of. And I haven't really given it too much thought about unique applications of other items that make sense to people in this world. You know, as the person who came up with the clan dagger concept for dwarves, because I'm a huge dwarf fan, you know, that sort of thing is forefront on my mind about doing interesting things, you know, with weapons or mundane pieces of gear that mean something to those cultures. So I don't have any concrete plans right now, but it's something I'm giving some. But you can expect that there will be at least a small gear section in the player's guide, mostly covering poultices, which are kind of readily available in many places, and you know, a few Gloamling weapons and maybe a few other odds in it. Yeah, the poultices will work like you put it on and you get healed slowly over time. Yeah, they're cheaper. You can't be benefiting from more than 1 at a time, but they can do things like help you overcome disease, poison, and they can also heal a wound slowly. So instead of getting all the hit points right away, you get them, you know, once an hour, once every 10 minutes or something like that, depending on the level of them. Right, low level ones work much slower, higher level ones work faster. But, you know, price, you know. So, poultices will be in there, and, you know, some of the class features we talked about here today include poultice crafting, tips and techniques and things to help you out. Like the ranger can make poultice. And the alchemist can kind of take some things that allow them to get an edge on making a lot of poultices every day. So if your group is traveling between encounters and you're out on the road and you fight something, you know, instead of burning your quick resources, you might as well burn your slow ones because you're walking from place. I've always thought poultices, I've always wanted herbalism to be more of a thing, and poultices are kind of my gateway into kind of herbalism magic. Not magic, alchemy. You know, using, you know, herbs and natural ingredients to help heal people, right? You know. Will I have stuff for the APG classes? As I mentioned, I believe creating stuff for the APG classes is a stretch goal of the Patreon. Stretch goal is just kind of the default word, I guess. But let me go ahead and look that up for folks, since that is a recurring question. Most people don't ever look at the goals. In fact, they're kind of hard to find. Even for me, they're kind of hard to find. Nope, it's not in set. Come here, you. Edit your page. That's where they in there, or that's the only way I can see. Goals. So, expanded support is $1,500 a month. So, folks, here's where we're at. It's a great way to close out the stream. First of all, I really want to thank you all for being here. Like, the folks who are watching this, who are here live, who watch this video on demand, you're the reason I'm doing this, right? You know, this is a lot of work, and I've got some groups that are excited to play it, but frankly, making it all presentable and showcasing it to other people before it's been edited or developed, and I do want to stress, that hasn't happened yet. I'm going to pay for that soon. I need to set aside some money to get a development pass and an editing pass on some of this material. So forgive my typos, my overuse of commas, and my occasional rules flubs. But But you're the reasons why I'm doing this, right? You know, giving everyone here that inside look at my process, at how this stuff actually comes together, going from rough draft to, you know, polished text to edited and developed text to laid out text to arts, and all of that stuff is a lengthy, expensive, complicated process, and you get a front row seat. And I can't do it without you. But you are also my biggest evangelists, right? You're the ones who have seen this. I can fight for it on social media as much as I want, but I'm fighting against an algorithm that doesn't like to show people links out of the site. So whenever I post a thing talking about something on Patreon, what a surprise! Twitter doesn't show it to anyone. it is almost invisible unless I pay money, which I can't afford to do, frankly. So, you know, tell your friends, tell other folks, let people know about what you're seeing and how awesome it is, right? Word of mouth is going to be how this stuff spreads. Message boards, social media, game groups, conventions, if you're going to those, right? Eventide is a thing I'm here for, and I'm here for the long haul. So I want to make it work, and the more folks we have doing it, the more resources I'm going to have to make it go faster, right? That's the trade-off. So if you want to see APG classes brought into the mixed, you know, help me get to the 1,500 goal. Once we hit 1,500, I will set aside more time to make it happen, right? Because that means I also have more money to buy more art, to get other passes done quicker. It just allows everything to go quicker without me risking, you know, my 401k for what it is, which isn't much. So I work in game. I don't get paid much. All right, folks. That is what I have here today. I want to thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate all of you taking the time to hang out with me here tonight. Here in just a few, I'm going to swap over to Twitch, and we're going to play some Wrath of the Righteous, so I hope you stick around for that, or don't stick around here. Hop on over to Twitch for that. And that's what we're going to be doing here in just a few minutes. Folks, thank you very much. This has been a blast as always. I will see you all next Tuesday. I think we'll either be talking Destiny or maybe the characters, maybe both. We'll see what we got in store, but we'll see you then, folks. It's going to be a blast. Thank you for watching, everybody. We will see you next time.